There's more journalists here than at the Oscar. Although the artists aren't quite as good looking as the ones that get Oscars.
Excelentíssimo Senhor George Bush,
Your Excellency,
Presidente dos Estados
Mr. George
Unidos
Bush,
da América,
President of the United States of America,
senhores integrantes da
the
comitiva
members
norte-americana
of
e
the
brasileira,
North American and Brazilian
governador de São Paulo,
delegations,
José Serra,
Governor of São Paulo, José
nosso
Serra,
querido presidente da Petrobras,
our dear President of
Luciano
Petrobras,
Gabrielli,
Mr. Gabrielli,
ministros,
ministers,
jornalistas,
journalists,
meus amigos
my
e
friends,
minhas amigas.
ladies and gentlemen.
Esta segunda visita do presidente
This
Bush ao
second
Brasil
visit by President Bush to
pouco
Brazil
mais de
in
ano
little more than 1 year
é mais passo
is
do aprofundamento
another
do
step in
diálogo
intensifying
entre nossos
dialogue
governos
between our
nossos
governments and our countries.
diálogo
This is a dialogue
que começou
which
antes mesmo
began
de eu tomar posse,
even before I took office,
quando o presidente Bush
when
me
President
recebeu
Bush
em
received me
dezembro de 2002
in a visit in December
Casa Branca.
2002 at the White House.
Nos frequentes encontros e
During
telefonemas
the
que
frequent
mantivemos desde
meetings
então,
and phone calls we have had
nossas
since then,
relações foram
our
sempre
relations
pautadas
have
pela
always been
extrema
characterized by
franqueza,
extreme frankness,
respeito mútuo,
mutual
espírito
respect,
construtivo.
and a constructive spirit.
Nossas
Our
sociedades são
societies are
multiétnicas.
multi-ethnic.
Nelas convivem
Many
muitas
cultures and
culturas e ideias.
ideas live together
Foram
within them.
fundadas nos princípios
They were
do
founded on the
pluralismo,
principles
da
of pluralism,
tolerância e do
tolerance,
respeito à diversidade.
and respect for diversity.
O fato de nossos
The
governos
fact
se
that our
respeitarem
governments
mutuamente
respect each other
explica
mutually
o excelente momento
explains the excellent
atravessam
moment
as
that
relações
relations between
entre
Brazil
Brasil
and the
e
United
os Estados
States
Unidos.
are going through.
Revela também
It also
o grande
reveals
potencial de
the great
cooperação
potential for
que tem nossos
cooperation
países,
between our
se
countries
formos capazes de
if
continuar
we are able to
construindo
continue
objetivos
building
comuns.
common objectives.
Essa foi a base das conversações
This has
que
been the
tivemos
basis of the conversations
Quando
we
repassamos
held today,
nossa ampla agenda
when we went
bilateral
over our
hoje
broad
e avaliamos
bilateral
como
agenda
melhor trabalhar
and
em questões
evaluated
regionais
how we could best
e
work on
multilaterais.
regional and multilateral issues.
O relacionamento entre Brasil e Estados
The
Unidos
relationship between
historicamente
Brazil and the
transcendeu os
U.S.
governos.
historically has gone
que
beyond
estiveram à frente
individual
dos nossos
governments at the head of
Prova
either of our
disso
countries.
É a ampla
One
rede
proof
de
of this is
relações
the
entre
broad
empresários,
range of relations amongst
representantes da sociedade
business
civil
leaders, representatives of civil
cidadãos
society,
dos dois
and the
países.
citizens of our two
Os
countries.
Estados Unidos
The
são o
United
nosso maior
States
parceiro
are our
comercial individual
largest
e
individual
o maior
trade partner
investidor no Brasil.
and the largest investor
Durante
in
meu
Brazil.
primeiro mandato,
During my first
o comércio
mandate
entre
in
nossos
government,
países aumentou mais
trade
de
between our
50%.
countries increased over
Os
50%.
investimentos norte-americanos no
U.S.
Brasil
investments in Brazil
dobraram
doubled
ao longo da
over
última
the
década.
past decade.
Empresas brasileiras
Brazilian
estão
companies
cada vez mais ativas na
are more and
economia
more active
norte-americana.
inside the U.S.
Contribuem
economy.
junto com a expressiva comunidade
They
brasileira
are
lá radicada
alongside the major
para a
Brazilian
geração
community
de
that lives
emprego
there,
e de
are
renda naquele país.
contributing to generate jobs and income in that
Senhoras e
country.
senhores,
Ladies
o
and
Brasil
gentlemen,
se orgulha
Brazil
de ter
is proud
contribuído
of having
para a
contributed
decisão
to the
do
decision
governo dos Estados
by the
Unidos de
U.S.
aumentar a
government
participação
to increase
dos
the share
biocombustíveis na
of
matriz
biofuels in its energy
Recordo
mix.
o entusiasmo com que
I
o presidente
recall
Bush
the
conheceu de perto
enthusiasm with which
no
President Bush
encontro que mantivemos em
was
Brasília em
first
2005,
exposed in the meeting we had in Brasilia in 2005 to Brazil's success story in terms of biofuel.
Temos no Brasil
Here in Brazil,
programa
we have
extremamente
an
exitoso,
extremely successful
considerado
program,
modelar,
considered a
fruto de
model,
investimento
which
de
came
mais
out of
de
the
30
investment
anos
of
em
over
pesquisa
30 years
e desenvolvimento.
in research and development.
Programa que
It's a
associa o
program which
respeito ao
brings
meio
together
ambiente,
respect for the
a
environment
preservação e ampliação
with
da
the
segurança
preservation
alimentar
and
de nossa sociedade.
intensification of the food security of our
E tem
society.
forte
It's
impacto
a program
social,
which has a major
sua
social
capacidade
impact
de gerar
because of
empregos,
its capacity to
fortalecer a
generate
agricultura
jobs, to
familiar,
strengthen family
fazer a
farming,
distribuição de
and to distribute
Esse é
income.
campo onde nossos
This
dois
is a field
países
where our two countries
cooperar.
can cooperate.
O memorando de
The
entendimento
Memorandum
sobre
of Understanding
biocombustíveis
on Biofuels, which our ministers signed today, is a decisive step in that direction. Bringing together their efforts, the U.S. and Brazil can further push the democratization of energy and bring biofuels to all. One of the most complex tasks that we face will be to assure access to major consuming centers. Brazil hopes that the ethanol market will be benefited by free trade, free of protectionism. That is the only way that the fuel of the future will be able to promote sustainable development and also benefit poor and developing countries. By making trade a factor of prosperity for all, this will be a challenge about which I spoke at length with President Bush. We need to eliminate imbalances that still constrain world trade and that aggravate the asymmetries of today's world. I expressed to the President my feeling that we are closer than ever to a successful conclusion of the negotiations of the Doha round. All should come out winning with an ambitious and balanced agreement, especially the poorest countries. More opportunities for growth and for development would be created in the poorest regions of the world. International trade in agriculture would increase, thereby reducing poverty, generating jobs and income in the least favored countries and regions. That is why I repeated to President Bush my willingness to participate in a meeting in any part of the world, to bringing together leaders, if this can help us overcome the final difficulties between us and a truly historic agreement. My dear Mr. President, your visit to Brazil coincides with an exceptional moment that our continent is going through, particularly South America. The dictatorships which our region suffered from for 2 decades are no more than a painful memory of the past. All South American governments have arisen from free elections with broad popular participation. All of them are working in projects for growth with income distribution capable of putting an end to terrible social inequalities that we have inherited and which has been aggravated by macroeconomic adventures in the past. We are all finally involved in a project for South American integration. The countries in our region have associated their destiny with that of the Mercosur and that of the South American Community of Nations. We know that integration is the best pathway to strengthen democracy and to achieve regional prosperity. It creates wealth and promotes development. It guarantees a more sovereign presence of our region in the world. Our integration is taking place amongst independent nations where diversity and tolerance are also factors of strength. We respect the political and economic options of each country. This has allowed us to make notable advances, expanding trade, carrying out infrastructure works, strengthening our energy security, the well-being of our societies, and bringing closer together peoples that will be able to move down their own roads. Integration also opens the way for investments from outside the region in the area of infrastructure and will have a multiplying effect on our economies, dynamizing all forms of exchange. Mr. President, re-democratization and the conquering of political freedom were not enough to keep millions of Brazilians and Latin Americans out of a situation of extreme poverty. That is why all governments in our region have implemented programs to develop our countries and to fight social exclusion. We, the presidents
Devemos pensar na vida dessa gente
must
mais
think about
sofrida,
the lives of those
que além
people
de
who
querer
suffer the most,
democracia para
and who, in
eleger
addition
seus
to having
governantes,
democracy to
quer ter o
elect their
direito à
rulers,
saúde,
also
à
have a right
educação,
to
à
health,
moradia,
to education, to
à
housing,
segurança,
to
e
public
quer ter o
safety,
direito de conquistar
to
sua
bring up their
cidadania.
children as
Todos nós
citizens.
sabemos,
We all
a
know
democracia política
that
prospera
political
quando se tem
democracy
desenvolvimento
prospers
econômico e
when we
social,
have economic and social
quando se
development,
erradica a pobreza,
when we
quando se
eradicate
combate a
poverty,
exclusão
when we fight
e a
exclusion
desigualdade
and
social.
social inequities.
Por isso, meu
That
caro
is
presidente
why,
Bush,
my dear President Bush,
essa sua visita
your visit
ao Brasil
to Brazil,
em tão pouco tempo,
second visit in such a
Abre-
short time,
na consciência do povo
opens
norte-americano,
within the possibility for the
the
U.S. and Brazilian peoples, and I believe all Latin American
a
peoples,
perspectiva
to have
de que não
the
estamos longe
prospect that we are not
de poder construir
far
novo
away
padrão
from
de
being able to
relacionamento e
build a new
transações,
standard of relations
de discutir
amongst
de
nations,
forma
to
livre
be
e
able to discuss
soberana
freely and
como os
sovereignly
países ricos
with
podem ajudar
rich,
os
about
países
how
mais
rich
pobres a
countries
se
can help poorer
desenvolverem
countries to develop.
e, mais importante do que
And
isso,
more important than all of that,
garantir
to assure
que a democracia
that democracy
seja a razão pela
will
qual
be the reason
os
why
benefícios da riqueza,
the benefits of
a
wealth,
construção da própria riqueza
building of wealth
e os
itself,
benefícios sociais
and the
que foram
social
produzidos
benefits that the people need
justifiquem plenamente
can fully
a
justify
conquista sofrida da democracia
the
no nosso continente.
hard fight to win democracy in
terminar,
our
Presidente Bush,
continent. President Bush, I would like to
dizendo
conclude by saying
a Vossa Excelência
to you
que o Brasil tem
that
consciência
Brazil is
do
aware
significado da integração
of the
da América
meaning
do Sul.
of the integration of
O
South
Brasil tem
America.
consciência do
Brazil is
significado da
aware of the
integração da
meaning
América
of the
Latina.
integration of Latin
Da
America,
mesma forma que o Brasil
just
tem
as Brazil
consciência
is
do
aware of
significado
the meaning
de uma aproximação
of coming
do Brasil
closer,
com a África
be-
e também dos
of Brazil
Estados
coming
Unidos
closer
com a
to
África.
Africa, and also the U.S. coming
Penso que
closer
Estados
to
Unidos e
Africa.
Brasil
I think the U.S. and
poderiam
Brazil,
juntos
working together,
construir alguns
could
projetos
carry
que
out some
pudessem significar
projects
para esses países mais
that
pobres
could
a
have the meaning
certeza
for poorer
das
countries
pessoas
to be able
não
to
verem
provide certainty
nos países
that
mais
people
ricos
would not see in richer
apenas
countries
os países exploradores,
just
mas que
exploiters,
vissem nos países mais ricos
but
do
to see
planeta.
richer countries in
Por
the world
isso, a rodada de Doha é importante.
as something else. And that
Por
is
isso, o
why the
acordo da OMC
Doha round
é
is important.
importante.
That's why the
E eu vejo aqui
WTO
a sua
agreement is
ministra
important. And I see
negociadora,
that your
vejo aqui
negotiating
o meu
minister is
ministro
here, the USTR
negociador,
is here, my
e
minister
eu
is
penso
here.
que deveríamos
And
dar a ele uma
I think
única
that we
ordem.
should give them one single
Faça acordo
order.
o mais rápido
Come to an
possível.
agreement as soon as
Porque se
possible.
Estados Unidos e Brasil
Because
se
if the U.S.
entenderem,
and Brazil come to an
fica mais
understanding,
fácil
it's
nós
easier
convencermos
for us to
aqueles
convince
que ainda não estão
those
participando
who are
desse
still
acordo.
not participating in that
Eu quero
agreement.
lhe agradecer
I want to thank you
e dizer que essa relação
and
Brasil
say
e
that
Estados
this
Unidos
relation between
é uma
Brazil and the
relação
U.S.,
consagrada,
which is a
ao longo de
long-standing
tantas
relation
décadas,
consecrated by
vai
decades
continuar
of
se
time,
fortalecendo
will continue to be
na
strengthened
medida em que nós nos respeitemos
to the
mutuamente,
extent that we respect
na
each
medida
other,
em que cada respeita
to the
as
extent that
decisões
each
políticas
respects
soberanas
the sovereign
de cada
political
Estado,
decisions of
na
each
medida
state, and to the
que
extent
tenhamos
that
capacidade de
we
construir
are
juntos
able to build
projetos
together
que possam ajudar
projects
terceiros países
that can help
a
other
saírem
countries
da situação de
to-
pobreza que se
to
encontram.
pull themselves out of
Muito
the
obrigado,
situation of
Presidente Bush,
poverty that they're in.
pela
Thank you
sua
very much,
visita ao
President Bush,
Brasil.
for your visit to Brazil.
Good to be back. I'm really looking forward to coming back and visiting with you because every time we have a conversation about mutual concerns and opportunities, it is a constructive and positive dialogue. I respect President Lula. Obviously, the people of Brazil respect him. After all, you won by a landslide election, and I congratulate you for your election. Yet, had not been back to your country since the elections. I think it's great to be able to say a good friend won re-election because it confirms the fact that democracy is alive and well in Brazil. And Brazil serves as such a great example for other democracies about what is possible and what's important. Thanks very much for the for the trip to the biofuels plant today. I think it's interesting, as I said there at the plant, that we spent a lot of time and a lot of conversations on how we can work together to promote alternative sources of energy. It's in the interest of the United States that we promote alternative sources of energy, and Brazil has showed what's possible. And so, Mr. President, I appreciate very much your leadership on this issue. I talked to my country about the need to reduce our gasoline usage by 20% over 10 years, that we will have 35 billion gallons of alternative fuels by the year 2017. I think it's an achievable goal. You have shown what is possible. I look forward to sharing research between our countries. I look forward to continuing to explore opportunities. I share your concerns about the people in democracy not receiving the benefits of democracy. I think you're very wise to recognize that democracy is only as strong as the people feel that the society benefits them. Part of the message on my trip to South America and eventually Guatemala as well as Mexico is to say that the American people care deeply about social justice, that we believe in education and health, that we believe in supporting programs that help lift people out of their current conditions, and we want to help. Thank you very much for our strong discussion on trade. It turns out America and Brazil are in the center of the WTO debate. That if we're despondent on the trade talks, a lot of the world will be despondent on the trade talks. That if we're unable to work together on the WTO talks, the world can't work together on the WTO talks. And that's why our conversation was vital. Because success of the Doha round for the WTO is necessary for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is the most effective anti-poverty program is trade. And so I commit to you the same thing that you have just committed, and that is we will work together. We will lock our trade ministers in a room, all aimed at advancing this important round. I share your optimism about what can get done. It's going to take a lot of work. I caution other countries, though, that if the United States and Brazil agree, that does not let them off the hook in terms of making the concessions necessary so that everybody's a winner in these trade negotiations. One thing that I strongly believe in is that I think America needs to be more open to students coming to our country, and I talked to the Secretary Rice about that a lot. And I hope a lot of Brazilian students are coming to the United States of America. I hope I think you'll find it to be a fantastic opportunity to study and learn, and it's in our interests that we have people come and see what we're like, to have people come and see the compassion of the American people. We talked about foreign policy in our discussions. We spent time on Central America, and one of the messages we will send to our Central American friends is that one way to help develop your countries is for you to adopt ethanol and biodiesel industries. We talked about Haiti, and I congratulate the President for his strong leadership and accepting the responsibilities for helping Haiti. Brazil has been a strong leader in helping provide stabilization and providing troops. I know it's a strain, Mr. President, but you made a tough choice. And it's a humanitarian choice, and it's a decent choice, and the people of Brazil ought to be proud of your leadership on this important issue. And we talked about Africa. The President shares deep concerns about Africa, as do I. We talked about how we can work together on specific projects aimed at helping people. And so our foreign ministries will talk about specific programs, a Brazilian-American joint venture to help eliminate poverty and lift people's lives up. I thank you for your leadership. People don't understand this probably, but I spend a lot of time on world affairs, and the President of this country is highly respected around the world. People listen to him. He speaks clearly. but he speaks with a set of values that are noble. And so, Mr. President, I'm so glad you're here. So glad I am here. I'm looking forward to welcoming you to the United States later on this month at Camp David to be able to continue our dialogue and our discussion about how we can work together for the common good. Thank you.
Muito obrigado. Conforme foi prévio.
Thank you very much. As we agreed earlier, we will have two questions from Brazilian journalists and two from U.S. journalists. I'll open the floor for the first question from Celso Teixeira from the Brazilian television record station.
Good afternoon, Mr. President Bush. Boa tarde, Presidente Lula. I will ask you in Portuguese.
Okay.
Como a gente pode acreditar que
how could we believe that these possibilities, these commitments that you're taking on to negotiate the opening up for the Doha round will be possible, since you have a very recent experience in negotiating FTAA, which did not work out. So what's the difference now in trade negotiations? Well, you'll be trying to speak the same language, despite the difference between Portuguese and English, but try to speak the same language to the rest of the world that these two countries are willing to negotiate. Why is this negotiation at this time different? And perhaps your meeting in Washington will be another chance to set a deadline for the negotiations. Maybe by the end of this month you can have a commitment.
That's a very legitimate question. First, I think deadlines are a little dangerous when two countries set them and we're dealing with a lot of other countries. Remember, we can agree, but if other major trading partners don't agree, then all of a sudden we have set ourselves up for failure. I'm an optimist that we can get it done. Therefore, I think we need to be careful about creating the conditions that will, for the world to say, oh, look, they failed. Since we did discuss the FTAA, the United States has entered into a series of agreements, as have Brazil. Now, there's a lot of bilateral and regional trade agreements going on. And so just because we had difficulty getting the FTAA done should not discourage one from trying to do something globally. I mean, after all, there's been a lot of successes on the trade front, just not on that particular trade front. And no question it was hard on the FTAA, and no question it's going to be hard on Doha. But the thing that's important about Doha is that it really is an opportunity for the world to get together to help eradicate world poverty. And there's a compelling reason to keep trying. And so I'm not the least bit discouraged by past failures, nor am I overly optimistic because we've had a lot of successes in trade agreements. I'm realistic in knowing that it's hard work, but it's going to require the leadership of Brazil and the United States to stay at it and work hard and see if we can't reach a positive agreement.
Bem, meu caro Celso.
Well, my dear friend
Primeiro,
Celso,
fazer acordo
first of all, to achieve an agreement
nações
between nations
não é uma coisa tão simples.
is not a simple thing to do.
Porque a complexidade dos problemas
the complexity of
econômicos,
economic problems,
políticos e sociais
as well as
que
political
envolve uma
and
decisão
social problems
podem
involved
ter resultados
in final decisions
extraordinários
may
e
have
podem ter resultados
extraordinary
desastrosos.
or disastrous results.
Eu penso que nós já conversamos muito sobre
I
a
think
rodada
that we
de
have
Doha ao longo
talked
desses
a lot
últimos
about
meses.
the Doha round in recent
E eu penso
months,
que nós estamos
and I
andando.
think that we are moving.
Andando com muita solidez
We're moving on solid
para
ground
encontrarmos a possibilidade
to find
ou
a chance
chamado ponto G para
for
fazer
the
o acordo.
so-called G point to come to an
Eu
agreement.
estou convencido
I am
da
convinced
disposição. Disse ao
of
presidente
the
Bush
willingness, as President Bush
que
said,
se Brasil e Estados Unidos
if Brazil and the U.S.
encontrarem entre si
find
ponto de equilíbrio
both find a
que
point of
possam fazer
equilibrium
oferta
where
aos
we
outros
can
países.
make offers
Porque os
to
Estados
other
Unidos levou a
countries because the
vantagem nessa
U.S. had an
negociação.
advantage in this
Tem
negotiation.
muita gente que
There's
depende
a lot
das
of people that
negociações
depend
da parte
on
dos Estados
the
Unidos,
negotiations
mas
from the
eles
U.S.,
negociam em nome deles
but
mesmos.
they negotiate in their own
Nós, no
name.
Brasil,
We in Brazil
temos que negociar
have to
junto
negotiate
com o G20.
together with the G20.
E a União Europeia
And the
é
European Union
conjunto de países.
is a group of
Portanto, vocês
countries.
percebem que nós,
So you can see that
além de convencermos
we, in
os
addition to
parceiros mais ricos,
convincing the
nós temos que
richer
convencer
partners,
também
we
os
also have
parceiros
to
mais
convince
pobres
our
a
poorer
aceitar o
partners
acordo.
to
E nós
accept the
estamos
agreement.
aceitando esse
And
desafio.
we accept that challenge. We take
Estamos
it on.
aceitando esse desafio porque
We're
nesse
taking on
momento
that challenge
o
because at
sucesso
this
das
point, the
negociações
success of
não é mais
negotiations
econômico.
is no longer just
Não se trata
economic
mais de quem
in
vai
nature.
perder
It's
economicamente
not just
ou
a matter
ganhar
of who's going to win or lose
economicamente. O
economically.
problema agora
The
é
problem now
eminentemente
is
político.
eminently political.
O problema agora
The
é se
problem
nós
now
vamos ter,
is
enquanto
whether,
lideranças mundiais,
as world leaders,
competência
we will be
para
competent
decidir para
or
melhor ou
not
para pior
to decide
o
for
futuro
better
de
or
milhões
worse
de
on the
seres
future
humanos
of millions
que
of
dependem
human
desse
beings
acordo.
that depend on this
Eu
agreement.
estou convencido que vamos chegar.
I'm convinced that we'll get there.
Segundo, não é possível
Second,
comparar
we cannot
o que estamos
compare
negociando agora na
what
rodada
we're
de Doha
negotiating now in the Doha
com
round with
as conversações sobre a ALCA.
conversations on
Até porque
FTAA.
você cobriu a minha
Of
campanha
course,
de
you
2002.
covered my 2002 campaign, and you saw how many speeches I made against the FTAA back in 2002 when I was first elected. Me and almost all the presidential candidates running for office in South America were against it because we believed in the strengthening of Mercosur, and we achieved that. We believed, first of all, in strengthening the integration of South America as a first priority, and today the
Brasil e América Latina.
Brazil's largest share of trade is with the rest of Latin America. This is a demonstration that we took major steps, and that does not mean that we cannot discuss as many bilateral agreements are possible between Brazil and the U.S., other countries, U.S. and other countries with Brazil.
É que
Concretely,
quando se negocia,
when you're
vai se
negotiating,
construindo os números.
the
E nenhum
numbers
país quer
get
ser o primeiro
built.
a fazer a
And no
oferta.
country wants to be the
Porque
first
se não
one
joga
to
baralho,
make
cada
an
carta
office.
que
It's like
você
playing
coloca na
cards.
mesa,
Every card you
ela
put
tá
on the
carimbada.
table
Você não
is
pode mais
stamped.
recolhê-la.
You can't take it back.
Então ninguém quer fazer a primeira
And nobody
proposta.
wants to make the first offer.
Certamente o presidente
Of course,
Bush
President
tem a dele no
Bush
bolso do colete.
has his offer in
Certamente
his
o
up his
Brasil tem a
sleeve.
sua no bolso do colete.
Brazil has one in
Certamente a
its
União
vest
Europeia tem a
pocket.
sua no bolso
The
do
European
colete.
Union has
Alguns
one
podem não
stuck
ter porque não querem mais
someplace,
jogar.
but and others don't want to even play.
Mas eu tenho certeza que ele e eu
But I'm
temos
certain that he and
porque
I
nós queremos jogar.
do have
Então, em algum momento,
our cards ready because
nós
we
vamos
want to
colocar
play.
as
So at
cartas
some
na
point,
mesa
we're going to put our cards
e
on the
vamos
table.
ver se seremos
And we're going to
capazes
see
ou não
whether
de
we'll
fazer
be
o acordo.
capable or not of
Eu
coming to an agreement.
Quero dizer
I want
que eu
to
estou
say that I
convencido
am
que
convinced
nós poderemos fazer um acordo.
that we can make an agreement.
Não será tudo que precisaríamos
It
fazer
certainly will not be everything that
mas
we
faremos o
could
que for
do, but
suficiente
we'll do
para continuar
enough
dando um alento
to
ao
continue
mundo,
encouraging
sobretudo
the
aos mais
rest of the
pobres,
world, especially
que
the
eles tenham uma
poorest
chance no
countries,
século XXI
that they
que
will
não
have a
tiveram no
chance
século XX.
in the 21st century that they did not have in the 20th century.
Mr. President Bush, Hugo Chavez of Venezuela has been using his country's vast oil wealth to court a whole new generation of Latin Americans. You've pretty much avoided using his name, but he certainly used yours a lot, including saying earlier today, "Go home, gringo." Do you think your visit to Latin America and agreements like the one you forged today will help counter his influence or just give him more ammunition? And to President Silva, Lula da Silva, were you able to persuade President Bush to help you on getting our Congress to lower the sugar ethanol tariffs?
I'll answer that one for him. He can answer it too. It's not going to happen. The law doesn't end until 2009. Then the Congress will accept it we'll look at it when the law ends. You may want to expand on that answer. As to my trip, I bring the goodwill of the United States to South America and Central America. That's why I'm here. I don't think America gets enough credit for trying to help improve people's lives. And so my trip is to explain as clearly as I can that our nation is generous and compassionate, that when we see poverty, we care, that when we see illiteracy, we want to do something about it, that when we find there to be a deficiency in health care, we'll help to the extent we can. I'm sure most people here in South America don't understand the United States has doubled our bilateral aid to countries in Central and South America since I've been the president. It's gone from 800 to 1.6 billion last year. And I say that not to just brag about dollars, but it's a starting point for people to understand this nation is committed to this prospect. A prosperous neighborhood is in the interest of the United States. A peaceful neighborhood is in our interests. And so we fully understand that if there's illiteracy, it'll affect our country eventually. Plus, the American people have got a great compassion for human rights and human dignity. I'm going to go to see some programs here after this press conference, all aimed at lifting the lives of citizens, all aimed at focusing on individuals and how best can they be helped. There is a lot of investment in the region, as the President noted. Oh, for some, that's just a fancy word, but for others who benefit from the investment through jobs, it's an essential part of their life. And so my trip down here is to remind our country that South America and Latin America are good places to invest, particularly in countries that adhere to rule of law and are transparent and believe in the fundamentals of freedom. And so I'm reminding people that which is pretty evident, that a lot of people know that there are direct ties between our countries. There's a lot of remittances from the United States back to the region. Why? Because there are people working for a living in our country that are sending money home to support their families. So this trip is to remind people of the ties that bind us and the importance of this region for the future of the United States. And I'm real glad to be here, and I appreciate the hospitality. Get another question moving.
Ok. A próxima pergunta é da jornalista Eliane Oliveira, de O Globo.
Next question from the journalist Eliana Oliveira from O Globo newspaper in Rio de Janeiro. My question is for President Bush, is whether you agree that in recent years the U.S. really had its back turned to Latin America, and if so, what could be done to make up for the losses in the past, in the last 2 years of your presidency? And to ask President Lula as well, yesterday you criticized U.S. subsidies as nefast, as nefarious. And so if you really decided to put the two ministers in a room to have an agreement, did you receive any signals that it's possible to reduce domestic subsidies in the U.S. to their farmers?
I strongly disagree with your description of U.S. foreign policy. That may be, what people say, but it's certainly not what the facts bear out. I just told you that our bilateral aid package has doubled. Again, I fully recognize that money alone is not a sign of compassion or care, but it's money aimed at helping people improve their lives. It's social justice money. Most of the bilateral aid money that we spend goes to education programs, health programs. I'm going to, when I go to Guatemala, I'm going to go outside the Capitol and see our military building health clinics. The USS Comfort's coming to the region to provide care for thousands of people who need health care. We train teachers, we train doctors, we train nurses. And so the characterization that our back has been turned is not borne out by the facts. It may be a perception, but the facts certainly dispel that. And that's why I've come. I've been in your great country twice in a very quick period of time, all aiming at sending the message that we care about our neighborhood a lot. And the relations between our governments are strong. We have an open relationship. The dialogue is friendly. There's not 100% agreement on issues, but nevertheless, issues are brought to the table in a constructive manner. And it's amazing what you can do when it comes to solving problems if there's a feeling of mutual respect and a priority. And it's easy to kind of dismiss the United States as a foreign policy in the region, but think about this. There are millions of people living in our country from the region. The United States is a multicultural society. We've got people from all over South and Central America living in the United States. Many there legally, many there illegally, which, by the way, argues for a comprehensive immigration reform plan that teaches people with respect and dignity. It's one of the big issues that I have put forth to our Congress to get a comprehensive immigration plan done. I appreciate your question, and I'm glad to be down here to be able to answer it.
Eu queria, na pergunta do jornalista,
In terms of the question from the U.S. journalist, he asked whether I was capable of convincing President Bush to get the tariffs reduced. If I were able to, if I had that capacity for persuasion that you think I might have, who knows? I might have convinced President Bush to do so many other things that I couldn't even mention here.
Veja, isso é processo.
This is a process.
Isso é processo. Não tem diferença de processo
There's
de
no difference
da
between
diferença normal entre
in negotiating processes
pessoas humanas.
Tem
momentos que você
like this in
pessoa,
normal negotiations between human beings. There's a time you look at a person in the face and say, I don't like that guy. And a few months later, they might be your best friend. And you were wrong when you said that you didn't like him. So I don't think that a country will give up on the things that protect their trade because someone else is asking. It's a process of convincing that has to take place. A lot of talking. And the day will come when that conversation will mature, and then we can find a common denominator that will allow us to come to an agreement. This, in terms of the journalist from the O Globo newspaper, your question, today we have a problem of what's at stake. I learned from my minister Celso Amorim that if we draw a triangle, we could show you what the difficulties are in the negotiations we have. What do countries want from the European Union? They want it to facilitate access to their agricultural market for poorer countries to export to them, including the U.S. wants to export to them. What do we want from the U.S.? We want them to reduce subsidies that they pay in their domestic market. And what does the U.S. and the European Union, what do they want from us, Brazilians and other countries in the G20, that we have greater flexibility and access to markets for industrial products and services. That's what's at stake. That's what's in the game. If we are intelligent enough and competent enough to pull out of our vest pockets the numbers that are still held secret as top state secrets, then we will find a common ground. Don't ask me what the number is. If I knew, I wouldn't tell you, because if I knew, then I'd establish a paradigm, and he'd say that I should back
Tem
off a
que
little
manter
bit.
esse número
So
guardado.
that's why
É que
these
nem
numbers are
jogador
held
quando vai
back.
bater pênalti, ele nunca fala qual
Otherwise,
é o canto que ele vai bater pro goleiro.
a soccer player, when they're going
Mas
to
a
kick
minha
a
crença
penalty goal, they
é
never
que
say
as
which
coisas
corner
estão
they're
mais ou
going to try
menos
to kick
encaminhadas.
into. But things
E eu
are
sou otimista. Tem
happening.
gente pessimista, porque tem gente pessimista
They're
pra
underway.
tudo no mundo,
Of
não
course,
tem
there's
problema.
pessimists about everything in the world.
Uma terceira coisa
That's no
que eu
problem. And
queria
a third thing I
dizer
would like to say
ao presidente Bush, se
to
me
President
permite
Bush,
dizer-lhe uma coisa.
if you'd allow me to
Eu, ao longo do
say
tempo,
one
eu
thing,
fui
over
construindo uma
time,
convicção
I have become more and more
e eu
convinced,
tenho dito isso aos meus
and I've said
companheiros
this
de
to my
CARICOM, tenho dito isso aos meus
colleagues in
companheiros da América Central,
CARICOM
tenho
and
dito
Central
isso aos
America.
da África,
I've said this to countries in Africa,
que nós, na verdade, não
that we
precisamos ficar
actually do
discutindo
not need
ajuda
to be
a
discussing
esses países.
aid to those
Que
countries.
nós precisamos discutir
What
uma
we need
coisa
to
mais
discuss is
importante
something
do
that's
que
even
ajuda.
more important than aid.
Nós precisamos construir juntos
We need to build
projetos
projects together,
que significam
projects that
desenvolvimento.
mean development.
Que depois de algum tempo a gente veja o
And that
resultado
after some time we
concreto
can see the
daquele dinheiro
concrete
investido.
results of the money that's been invested.
Porque em alguns países, ao
Because
longo
in
da
some
história,
countries, over
nem sempre o dinheiro
the
da
years,
ajuda resulta em alguma
aid
coisa.
money doesn't always
não se tem
lead to
controle da
concrete
aplicação
results
desse
because you don't control how it's
Eu
spent
estou
that well.
convencido
I'm convinced
que no programa de biocombustíveis,
that in the biofuel
se
programs,
tivermos maturidade,
if we are mature enough
compreensão política,
and have the political
fazermos projetos
understanding
conjuntos
and
com
can
outros
carry out
países,
joint projects
com
with
Estados
other
Unidos, com
countries,
África do Sul,
with the
com
U.S.
Índia,
involving
com
South
China,
Africa,
com países
China,
europeus,
India,
e
European
financiar
countries, and if we
projetos
fund
de produção de
projects
biodiesel e
projects
etanol
to
nesses países
produce
mais pobres,
biodiesel and ethanol in
e
poorer
depois os
countries,
países mais ricos
and then the richer
comprarem
countries
biodiesel
buy
produzido,
biodiesel
aí
that's
sim nós vamos
produced there,
verificar que o
then we'll
investimento
see that
colocado
investments
naquele país
put into those
produziu
countries
resultados.
have produced
E o
results,
que é mais importante,
and
gerou
even more
empregos.
important, generated jobs.
Porque nada mais
Because
dá cidadania a
there's
homem ou a mulher
nothing gives
do que
more
ele
citizenry
saber que
to a
tem
man or a woman than to know that
e
they
no
have
final
a
do mês
job
levar o dinheirinho pra casa.
and to take
Eu
some
penso
money
que é isso que
home
nós
at the end of the
poderíamos
month.
fazer.
I think
Eu
that's
disse
what
ao
we could
presidente
do.
Bush,
And I
nós
said to
poderíamos
President
fazer
Bush,
isso
we
para a
could
América
do that for
Central.
Central America.
Construir projetos
We
de
could
desenvolvimento
build
dos países mais
development
pobres.
projects for
E
poorer
depois de 5,
countries.
6 ou 10
Then
anos,
after
nós
5,
vamos
10
perceber
years,
que
we'll be
alguma
able
coisa
to
foi
see that
construída
something
ali
was
que
done
está
there
gerando riqueza.
that's generating
Essa,
wealth.
na minha opinião,
That,
é a
in my
grande
opinion,
forma
is
de
the
ajuda
real way, the
que os
major
países
way
mais
that
ricos podem dar
richer
aos
countries
países mais
can
pobres.
aid poorer countries.
Steve Holland.
Mr. President, the Iraqis hold their regional conference tomorrow. What are your expectations for it? And are you now willing to talk directly with Iran and Syria at this meeting?
The expectations are that nations in the neighborhood plus nations of the world recognize that democracy can lead to peace, and that when 12 million people vote to live in a free society, it's in all our interest to help them realize the blessings of a free society. That's the expectations. In other words, a commitment to helping this young democracy survive and thrive. Our message to the Syrians and Iranians won't change at that meeting that I've stated publicly, which is we expect you to help this young democracy. And we will defend ourselves and the people in Iraq from weapons being shipped in to cause harm, that we will protect ourselves and help the Iraqi people protect themselves against those who would murder the innocent to achieve political objectives. And it's a positive meeting, Steve, particularly for Prime Minister Maliki and his government, in that countries will now be coming to a rather formal meeting to express support. And it's positive because I think it's going to be important for the Iraqi people who have been suffering a lot to hear from other countries in the world that say, you know, we embrace your courage. We embrace your willingness to take risk for freedom. And we'll see how it goes, but I'm happy to have supported the Prime Minister's request that this meeting take place. Mr. President, thanks. Your press conferences are nice. I appreciate the Brazilian press for coming. It's Glad the American press behaved okay. Be careful, they may spend a lot of time at the bars around here, but yeah. Okay, thanks.